Today, I want to take you deep inside one of the harshest correctional environments in the United States. The prisons of Alaska, often called America's coldest and most isolated prisons. When most people think about prison, they imagine concrete walls, locked gates, and strict security. But in Alaska, imprisonment comes with another powerful challenge: extreme isolation and brutal weather. In many parts of the state, temperatures fall far below freezing for months. Snowstorms can cut off entire communities, and darkness can last nearly all day during winter. Imagine serving a prison sentence in conditions where the environment itself feels like another layer of punishment. Many Alaska state prisons are located far away from major cities. Because of this, inmates are often separated from their families by hundreds of miles. Visits become rare, expensive, and sometimes impossible due to dangerous weather conditions. This isolation affects mental health deeply. Human connection is important for rehabilitation, yet many prisoners struggle with loneliness, depression, and emotional stress. Life inside these prisons follows a strict routine. Inmates wake early, eat basic meals, perform assigned jobs, and spend long hours indoors. During severe winters, outdoor activities may be limited. The cold climate also increases operational challenges for prison staff, who must maintain safety and heating systems in dangerous conditions. Another major issue is the high number of inmates dealing with substance abuse, trauma, and mental illness. Alaska's remote communities often face limited health care and social support, and these struggles sometimes continue inside prison walls. Correctional officers are not only guards. Many are also expected to manage crises, conflicts, and mental health emergencies daily. However, prison life in Alaska is not only about hardship. Some facilities offer educational programs, vocational training, and rehabilitation services. Inmates can learn skills such as carpentry, welding, cooking, or basic education courses. These programs aim to prepare individuals for life after release and reduce repeat offenses. The story of Alaska's prisons also raises larger questions about justice and humanity. Should prisons focus only on punishment, or should they also focus on rehabilitation and second chances? Can a person truly rebuild their life in an environment shaped by isolation and survival? These questions matter because prisons reflect society itself. The way we treat prisoners says something about our values, our justice system, and our belief in human change. In conclusion, Alaska's prisons are more than cold buildings in remote places. They are environments where human endurance is tested every day by climate, isolation, and personal struggle. Understanding these realities helps us think more deeply about justice, rehabilitation, and the importance of hope even in the harshest conditions. One of the most defining features of life inside Alaska State Prison is the extreme and unforgiving climate. Alaska is known for its long, brutal winters where temperatures can drop far below freezing, sometimes reaching dangerous levels that can threaten human survival. Heavy snowfall, icy winds, and months of darkness create an environment that is physically and mentally exhausting not only for inmates, but also for prison staff. Unlike prisons located in warmer regions of the United States, Alaska's correctional facilities must constantly battle the harsh natural environment. Heating systems become critical for survival, and any technical failure during winter can quickly turn into a serious emergency. Snowstorms often isolate prison facilities from nearby towns and transportation routes, making deliveries, medical transfers, and family visits difficult. In some remote areas, prisons can feel completely cut off from the outside world for days. The cold weather also affects the daily lives of inmates. Outdoor recreation time may be shortened or canceled due to dangerous temperatures or heavy snow. Many prisoners spend extended periods indoors in confined spaces, which can increase stress, frustration, and feelings of isolation. The lack of sunlight during Alaska's dark winter months can also negatively affect mental health, contributing to depression, anxiety, and emotional fatigue. For correctional officers and prison workers, operating in these conditions requires constant preparation and discipline. Staff members must work long shifts in freezing weather, maintain security during storms, and ensure that prison infrastructure remains functional despite the climate. Even simple activities, such as transportation between prison buildings, become more difficult because of ice-covered roads and severe weather conditions. The extreme climate creates a unique form of punishment beyond the prison sentence itself. Inmates are not only confined by walls and security systems, but are also surrounded by a powerful natural environment that constantly reminds them of isolation and hardship. The freezing temperatures, endless snow, and dark winters become part of daily prison life, shaping the emotional atmosphere inside the facility and influencing the experiences of everyone living and working there. Severe isolation is one of the most difficult and emotionally painful aspects of life inside Alaska State Prison. Unlike prisons located near large cities or populated regions, many correctional facilities in Alaska are built in remote areas surrounded by mountains, forests, snow-covered land, and vast empty wilderness. These locations are often hundreds of miles away from inmates' hometowns and families, creating a deep sense of separation from the outside world. For many prisoners, maintaining contact with loved ones becomes extremely difficult. Family visits are rare because traveling across Alaska can be expensive, time-consuming, and dangerous during winter storms. Some families must travel by plane, ferry, or long highway routes just to reach the prison. Harsh weather conditions frequently cancel transportation services, meaning planned visits may never happen. As a result, many inmates go months or even years without seeing close relatives, spouses, or children in person. This isolation affects prisoners on a psychological level. Human beings naturally depend on social connection, emotional support, and communication with others. When those connections weaken, inmates often experience loneliness, hopelessness, anxiety, and emotional stress. Being physically cut off from society can make prisoners feel forgotten or abandoned, especially during long prison sentences. Holidays and special occasions become particularly difficult because inmates are reminded of the distance between themselves and their families. The isolation is not only emotional, but also geographical. Many Alaska prisons are surrounded by frozen landscapes with little human activity nearby. Unlike urban prisons where inmates may still hear city sounds or see signs of normal life beyond prison walls, Alaska's prisons can feel completely separated from civilization. Endless snowfields, dark winter skies, and silent surroundings create an atmosphere that can feel cold both physically and emotionally. Communication inside prison is also heavily controlled. Phone calls are limited, monitored, and often expensive. Internet access is restricted, and letters can take a long time to arrive due to Alaska's remote mail routes. For inmates who already struggle with mental health issues, this lack of connection can intensify feelings of depression and emotional instability. Isolation also impacts rehabilitation. Family support is often considered one of the most important factors in helping former inmates successfully return to society after release. Strong relationships can provide emotional encouragement, financial help, and motivation to change. However, when prisoners are isolated for long periods and relationships weaken over time, reintegration into normal life becomes much harder. The prison environment itself can increase feelings of separation. Strict security procedures, locked cells, controlled movement, and limited personal freedom constantly remind inmates that they are disconnected from normal society. During Alaska's long winters, when darkness lasts for many hours each day, the emotional effects of isolation can become even more intense. Some inmates describe the experience as feeling trapped not only by prison walls, but also by the endless cold wilderness surrounding them. Mental health challenges are among the most serious and complex issues inside Alaska State Prison. Many inmates enter prison already struggling with emotional trauma, depression, anxiety, addiction, or untreated psychological disorders. Once inside the harsh and isolated prison environment, these problems often become even more severe. The combination of extreme weather, separation from family, strict routines, and limited freedom creates intense psychological pressure that can affect nearly every aspect of an inmate's life. One of the biggest contributors to mental stress is loneliness. Inmates spend long periods separated from loved ones and disconnected from normal society. The emotional pain of missing family members, children, or close relationships can slowly build over time. Many prisoners feel abandoned or forgotten, especially when visits and communication become rare. This emotional isolation can lead to sadness, hopelessness, and a loss of motivation. The physical environment of Alaska also affects mental health in powerful ways. During winter, some parts of Alaska experience very limited daylight, with long periods of darkness lasting for months. Lack of sunlight is strongly connected to depression, fatigue, mood swings, and emotional exhaustion. Inside prison walls, where movement and outdoor access are already restricted, the dark and cold atmosphere can intensify negative emotions. The freezing climate and endless snow create a setting that many inmates describe as emotionally draining and mentally overwhelming. Prison routines can also create psychological strain. Life inside prison is highly controlled, with inmates following strict schedules every day. Meals, sleeping hours, recreation, work assignments, and movement are all regulated by prison authorities. Over time, this lack of personal control can make inmates feel powerless and emotionally numb. Repetition and confinement may increase stress, frustration, and anger, especially for individuals serving long sentences. Another major issue is the high number of inmates with past trauma. Many prisoners come from backgrounds involving violence, poverty, abuse, substance addiction, or unstable family environments. Some have experienced domestic violence, childhood neglect, or exposure to crime from an early age. These unresolved experiences often continue to affect their emotional stability inside prison. In a stressful correctional environment, past trauma can resurface through aggression, panic attacks, emotional breakdowns, or self-destructive behavior. Mental illness inside prison can also create safety concerns. Inmates suffering from severe depression or psychological disorders may struggle to cope with prison life. Some develop anger problems or emotional instability that can lead to conflicts with other prisoners or staff. Others may withdraw completely, isolating themselves from social interaction and losing interest in daily activities. In extreme cases, mental health crises can result in self-harm or suicidal thoughts. Correctional officers and prison staff face challenges as well. They are not only responsible for maintaining security, but are also often expected to manage inmates experiencing emotional breakdowns, panic attacks, or violent behavior caused by mental illness. This creates pressure on prison systems that may already have limited mental health resources, especially in remote Alaska locations where professional psychiatric care is harder to access. Access to proper treatment is another important challenge. Some prisons offer counseling services, therapy programs, or psychiatric support, but resources are often limited compared to the growing number of inmates needing help. Long waiting times, understaffed facilities, and restricted medical services can make it difficult for prisoners to receive consistent mental health care. Inmates who do not receive proper treatment may continue struggling emotionally throughout their sentence. Mental health challenges affect not only the individual inmate, but also the overall prison environment. Stress, fear, emotional instability, and untreated psychological issues can increase tension inside correctional facilities. This can lead to violence, disciplinary problems, and difficulties maintaining order within the prison system. The emotional atmosphere inside Alaska State Prison is shaped not only by physical confinement, but also by the silent psychological battles many inmates fight every day. Life inside Alaska State Prison is built around a highly controlled and disciplined daily routine. Every hour of the day is carefully scheduled, and inmates are expected to follow prison rules with very little personal freedom or flexibility. The strict routine is designed to maintain order, security, and discipline within the correctional system. But for many prisoners, it also creates emotional pressure and a constant feeling of control over every aspect of life. Most inmates begin their day very early in the morning. Prison lights often turn on before sunrise, and prisoners are required to wake up immediately for head counts and inspections. Correctional officers regularly check cells to ensure that every inmate is present and following regulations. Even simple activities such as making the bed, cleaning the cell, or preparing for breakfast are done according to strict prison procedures. Meals are served at scheduled times and are usually simple and repetitive. Inmates line up under supervision, move through controlled dining areas, and are given limited time to eat before returning to their assigned areas. Every movement inside the prison is monitored, including when prisoners walk through hallways, attend programs, or return to their cells. Security cameras, locked doors, and armed officers constantly remind inmates that their lives are under strict institutional control. During the day, inmates may participate in prison work assignments, educational classes, or rehabilitation programs, depending on the facility and their behavior record. Some prisoners work in kitchens, laundry rooms, maintenance departments, or prison workshops. Others may attend classes focused on literacy, vocational skills, or substance abuse recovery. However, participation is often tightly scheduled and supervised. In Alaska prisons, weather conditions can strongly affect daily activities. During severe winter storms or extreme cold, outdoor recreation time may be canceled completely. Inmates can spend long hours indoors with limited movement, increasing boredom and frustration. Exercise opportunities become restricted, and prisoners may feel trapped inside small spaces for extended periods. The harsh climate adds another layer of difficulty to an already controlled environment. The routine inside prison rarely changes. Days often feel repetitive, with the same schedules repeated week after week and year after year. Many inmates describe prison life as emotionally exhausting because of this constant repetition. The lack of freedom to make personal choices, such as when to eat, sleep, work, or relax, can slowly affect a person's mental state. Over time, some inmates become emotionally numb or lose motivation because every part of life is controlled by institutional rules. Rules and discipline are strictly enforced. Prisoners who break regulations may face punishment, such as loss of privileges, restricted movement, solitary confinement, or reduced visitation rights. Even small violations can result in disciplinary action. Because of this, inmates often live under constant pressure to avoid mistakes or conflicts with staff and other prisoners. Nighttime inside the prison follows the same level of control. Inmates return to their cells at scheduled hours, and regular nighttime checks continue throughout the evening. The sound of locked doors, security announcements, and routine inspections becomes part of everyday life. Privacy is extremely limited, and prisoners are rarely alone without supervision or monitoring. For long-term inmates, adapting to this rigid structure can be mentally challenging. Some individuals become dependent on the routine and struggle to adjust later to life outside prison after release. Others resist the constant control and experience anger, frustration, or emotional stress. The strict routine is not only a method of maintaining order. It becomes a defining part of prison life itself, shaping behavior, emotions, and the daily experiences of everyone inside the facility. Operating a prison in Alaska is far more challenging than running correctional facilities in most other parts of the United States. The extreme climate, remote geography, limited transportation systems, and isolation create serious operational difficulties that affect every part of prison management. Prison officials and correctional staff must constantly deal with problems that go beyond normal security concerns, making daily operations physically demanding, expensive, and unpredictable. One of the biggest operational challenges is the harsh weather. Alaska experiences some of the coldest temperatures in North America, with freezing winters, heavy snowstorms, icy roads, and strong winds that can continue for months. Prison facilities must maintain reliable heating systems at all times because even a short power or heating failure during extreme cold can become life-threatening for inmates and staff. Heating large prison buildings in such conditions requires enormous amounts of energy and continuous maintenance. Snow and ice also create transportation difficulties. Many Alaska prisons are located in remote areas far from major cities, hospitals, supply centers, or emergency services. Delivering food, medical supplies, fuel, maintenance equipment, and other necessities can become extremely difficult during severe weather. Roads may close because of snowstorms, flights can be delayed or canceled, and isolated facilities may temporarily lose access to outside support. These conditions force prison administrations to prepare carefully for emergencies and maintain largesse of critical supplies. Emergency medical situations become especially complicated in remote prisons. If an inmate suffers a serious injury or medical crisis, transferring them to a hospital may take hours because of weather conditions or long travel distances. During blizzards or dangerous storms, transportation by road or air may not be possible at all. This creates pressure on prison medical staff, who often must handle emergencies inside the facility until outside assistance becomes available. Maintaining prison infrastructure in Alaska's climate is another major difficulty. Freezing temperatures can damage pipes, electrical systems, water supplies, and building structures. Snow accumulation on roofs and around prison grounds requires constant removal to prevent accidents or structural problems. Ice-covered walkways and roads increase the risk of injuries for both inmates and staff. Regular maintenance work becomes more dangerous and expensive because equipment and workers must operate in severe weather conditions. Staffing prisons in remote Alaska locations can also be difficult. Correctional officers and support workers may face long commutes, harsh living conditions, and emotional stress caused by isolation. Recruiting and retaining qualified employees is often a challenge, especially in isolated regions where housing, healthcare, and community resources may be limited. Staff shortages can increase workloads, create fatigue, and place additional pressure on prison operations. Communication systems are another concern. In remote areas, technical problems caused by storms or infrastructure failures can interrupt phone lines, internet systems, or security networks. Reliable communication is essential for maintaining prison safety, coordinating emergencies, and managing inmate activities. Any disruption can create serious operational risks inside the facility. The high cost of operating prisons in Alaska is also a major issue. Heating expenses, transportation costs, emergency planning, infrastructure maintenance, and staffing challenges make Alaska prisons significantly more expensive to manage compared to many other state correctional systems. Supplying remote facilities requires careful logistical planning, and even basic resources may cost far more because of transportation difficulties and weather-related delays. Security management becomes more complicated under these conditions as well. Officers must maintain order and safety while dealing with environmental stress, limited resources, and unpredictable weather emergencies. During severe storms or lockdown situations, prison staff may need to work extended shifts because replacement workers cannot safely travel to the facility. This can lead to exhaustion and increased stress among correctional officers. The isolation of Alaska prisons can also limit access to rehabilitation programs, specialized healthcare providers, and outside educational services. Bringing instructors, counselors, or medical specialists into remote facilities may be difficult and expensive. As a result, inmates in isolated prisons may have fewer opportunities compared to prisoners in larger urban correctional systems. Every aspect of prison management in Alaska requires constant preparation, adaptability, and endurance. The correctional system must function not only against the challenges of crime and security, but also against one of the harshest natural environments in the world. The freezing temperatures, remote locations, and unpredictable weather transform even ordinary prison operations into complex daily struggles. Substance abuse and personal trauma are deeply connected to the lives of many inmates inside Alaska State Prison. A large number of prisoners enter the correctional system carrying painful experiences from their past, including addiction, violence, family instability, poverty, neglect, and emotional suffering. For many individuals, prison is not the beginning of their struggles, but the continuation of problems that started long before their arrest. Addiction is one of the most common issues among inmates in Alaska's prison system. Many prisoners have histories of alcohol abuse, drug dependency, or substance-related crimes. In some remote Alaska communities, access to health care, addiction treatment, and mental health support is limited, which allows substance abuse problems to grow without proper intervention. As addiction worsens, individuals may become involved in theft, violence, drug trafficking, or other criminal activities that eventually lead to incarceration. Inside prison, the effects of addiction do not simply disappear. Many inmates continue to struggle physically and emotionally even after substances are removed from their daily lives. Withdrawal symptoms, cravings, emotional instability, and psychological dependence can make prison adjustment extremely difficult. Some prisoners experience anger, anxiety, depression, or severe emotional stress as they attempt to cope without drugs or alcohol. Trauma is another major factor affecting prison populations in Alaska. Many inmates come from backgrounds marked by violence, abuse, broken homes, or childhood neglect. Some witnessed domestic violence growing up, while others experienced physical or emotional abuse themselves. Exposure to crime, unstable environments, and poverty at an early age can leave long-lasting psychological scars that continue into adulthood. In Alaska's isolated rural communities, social and economic struggles often intensify these problems. Limited educational opportunities, unemployment, overcrowded housing, and lack of access to counseling services can create environments where addiction and trauma become widespread. For some individuals, substance abuse becomes a way to escape emotional pain, stress, or hopelessness. Over time, this cycle can lead to criminal behavior, imprisonment, and continued emotional damage. Once inside prison, unresolved trauma can strongly influence inmate behavior. Some prisoners become aggressive or defensive because they have learned to survive through violence or distrust. Others withdraw emotionally, avoiding interaction and isolating themselves from others. Trauma may also contribute to panic attacks, emotional breakdowns, mood swings, and difficulty controlling anger. In stressful prison environments, past emotional wounds often resurface more intensely. The prison atmosphere itself can sometimes deepen emotional struggles. Constant surveillance, strict rules, confinement, and separation from family can trigger feelings of fear, stress, or emotional instability. Inmates who already suffer from trauma may find it difficult to feel safe or emotionally stable inside correctional facilities. Conflicts with other prisoners, fear of violence, and pressure to appear strong can increase psychological tension every day. Substance abuse and trauma also create major challenges for correctional staff. Officers must manage inmates who may be emotionally unstable, struggling with withdrawal, or reacting to years of unresolved pain. Conflict between inmates are sometimes fueled by anger, frustration, or emotional breakdowns linked to addiction and trauma. This places additional pressure on prison security and daily operations. Some Alaska prisons attempt to address these problems through rehabilitation programs, counseling services, addiction recovery classes, and mental health treatment. Programs may include substance abuse education, therapy sessions, peer support groups, or anger management training. The goal is not only to punish criminal behavior, but also to help inmates understand the deeper issues that contributed to their actions. However, resources are often limited, especially in remote facilities where access to trained mental health professionals may be difficult. Recovery from addiction and trauma is often a long and painful process. Many inmates must confront emotional memories they spent years trying to escape through drugs, alcohol, or criminal behavior. Learning healthier coping mechanisms inside prison can be extremely difficult in an environment already filled with stress and isolation. Some prisoners succeed in rebuilding themselves through education, counseling, and rehabilitation programs, while others continue struggling with emotional pain throughout their sentences. The connection between substance abuse, trauma, and crime reveals that many prison inmates are dealing with far more than legal punishment alone. Behind prison walls are individuals carrying years of emotional damage, addiction, and personal suffering that continue to shape their lives every day inside Alaska's correctional system. Rehabilitation programs play an important role inside Alaska State Prison because they are designed to help inmates rebuild their lives, develop useful skills, and prepare for life after release. While prisons are often associated with punishment and security, many correctional facilities in Alaska also focus on reducing repeat crimes by giving inmates opportunities for education, personal growth, and behavioral change. These programs are especially important in an environment where isolation, emotional stress, and difficult life histories can otherwise leave inmates feeling hopeless about their future. One of the most common rehabilitation efforts inside Alaska prisons is education. Many inmates enter prison without completing high school or with very limited academic skills. Educational programs allow prisoners to study basic literacy, mathematics, reading comprehension, and general education courses. Some inmates work toward earning a high school equivalency diploma or vocational certifications that may help them find employment after release. Education provides more than knowledge. It can also increase self-confidence and create a sense of purpose during incarceration. Vocational training is another major part of rehabilitation. Alaska prisons often offer programs that teach practical job skills such as carpentry, welding, construction work, cooking, maintenance, plumbing, or mechanical repair. These training opportunities aim to prepare inmates for real-world employment opportunities after their sentences end. Learning a trade can give prisoners a legal and stable path to support themselves and reduce the chances of returning to criminal activity. Work programs inside prison also help inmates develop discipline and responsibility. Prisoners may work in kitchens, laundry services, maintenance departments, workshops, or facility cleaning crews. Through these assignments, inmates learn time management, teamwork, and structured work habits. Some programs even allow prisoners to produce goods or perform services that benefit local communities or government agencies. Substance abuse treatment programs are especially important in Alaska prisons because many inmates struggle with addiction. Rehabilitation programs often include addiction counseling, recovery classes, group discussions, and relapse prevention training. These programs encourage inmates to understand the causes of their addiction, recognize destructive behaviors, and develop healthier coping methods. For many prisoners, addiction treatment becomes one of the first steps toward changing their lives. Mental health counseling is another key part of rehabilitation efforts. Some inmates receive therapy sessions, anger management training, or psychological support to help them deal with trauma, depression, anxiety, or emotional instability. Prison counselors and mental health professionals work with inmates to improve emotional control, communication skills, and decision-making abilities. Addressing mental health issues is critical because untreated emotional problems can contribute to violence, conflict, and repeated criminal behavior. Religious and spiritual programs also provide support for many inmates. Chaplains, religious volunteers, and faith-based groups may offer worship services, counseling, scripture studies, or mentorship programs inside correctional facilities. For some prisoners, spirituality becomes a source of hope, emotional healing, and personal reflection during incarceration. In some Alaska prisons, rehabilitation programs also focus on cultural identity and community connection, especially for Alaskan Native inmates. Cultural education, traditional practices, and community-based support programs may help prisoners reconnect with their heritage and develop a stronger sense of belonging and self-worth. These efforts can be especially meaningful for inmates from remote rural communities who feel disconnected from their cultural roots. Participation in rehabilitation programs can positively affect prison behavior as well. Inmates who stay involved in education, work, or counseling programs often become more disciplined and focused. Structured activities reduce boredom, lower tension inside prisons, and give inmates constructive goals to work toward. Programs can also improve relationships between inmates and staff by creating environments focused on progress rather than constant conflict. Despite these benefits, rehabilitation programs in Alaska face many obstacles. Remote prison locations, limited funding, staffing shortages, and harsh weather conditions can make it difficult to provide consistent educational and counseling services. Some facilities may not have enough teachers, therapists, or vocational instructors to meet inmate needs. Transportation difficulties and isolation can also limit partnerships with outside organizations that normally support rehabilitation efforts. Not every inmate participates successfully in these programs. Some prisoners struggle with motivation, emotional instability, or long-term addiction problems that make rehabilitation difficult. Others may distrust the system or feel uncertain about their future after release. However, for many inmates, rehabilitation programs represent one of the few opportunities to build a different life path while serving their sentence. Inside Alaska State Prison, rehabilitation is not simply about teaching skills or completing classes. It is an attempt to help individuals recover from years of addiction, trauma, violence, and poor decision-making while living in one of the harshest correctional environments in America. The conditions inside Alaska State Prison raise important and complex questions about justice, punishment, and the true purpose of the prison system. These questions go beyond the prison walls and force society to examine how criminals should be treated, what prisons are meant to achieve, and whether incarceration alone can truly solve deeper social problems. Alaska's harsh prison environment, extreme isolation, and difficult living conditions make these debates even more intense. One of the biggest questions is whether prisons should focus mainly on punishment or rehabilitation. Some people believe prison exists primarily to punish individuals who break the law and to protect society from dangerous behavior. From this perspective, strict discipline, loss of freedom, and difficult conditions are seen as necessary consequences for criminal actions. Supporters of this view often argue that harsh prison environments discourage crime and hold offenders accountable for the harm they caused. Others believe the justice system should place greater emphasis on rehabilitation and second chances. They argue that many inmates come from backgrounds shaped by poverty, addiction, trauma, abuse, mental illness, and lack of opportunity. According to this view, simply locking people away without addressing the root causes of criminal behavior may not reduce crime in the long term. Instead, prisons should help inmates rebuild their lives through education, treatment programs, counseling, and personal development. Alaska's prison system highlights this conflict clearly because the environment itself can feel like an additional punishment beyond the sentence ordered by the court. The freezing temperatures, remote locations, emotional isolation, and psychological stress create conditions that many people believe go beyond ordinary imprisonment. Critics question whether such extreme environments can truly encourage rehabilitation or whether they instead increase emotional damage and hopelessness among inmates. Another important issue involves mental health and addiction. Many prisoners inside Alaska State Prison struggle with psychological disorders or substance abuse problems that existed before their incarceration. This raises questions about whether prisons are the right place for individuals who primarily need medical treatment, counseling, or rehabilitation services. Some experts argue that society often uses prisons to manage problems connected to mental illness, addiction, and homelessness instead of investing in healthcare and prevention programs. There are also concerns about fairness and equality within the justice system. People from poor communities, isolated rural areas, or difficult family backgrounds are often more likely to enter the prison system. In Alaska, some remote communities face high rates of poverty, addiction, unemployment, and limited access to mental health support. Critics argue that these social inequalities contribute to crime and increase the likelihood of incarceration for vulnerable populations. Questions about long-term imprisonment are also significant. Some inmates spend many years inside prison, separated from society and exposed to strict institutional control for extended periods. This creates debate about whether long prison sentences truly help individuals change, or whether they sometimes make reintegration into society more difficult. Prisoners who spend decades in isolation may struggle to adapt to normal life after release because they have become dependent on prison routines and disconnected from modern society. The treatment of inmates inside prison is another major topic in discussions about justice. Human rights advocates argue that prisoners should still be treated with dignity and humanity regardless of their crimes. They believe access to health care, mental health treatment, safe living conditions, education, and family contact are essential parts of a fair correctional system. Others argue that individuals who commit serious crimes should face strict consequences and should not receive what they see as excessive privileges while incarcerated. Correctional officers and prison staff are also affected by these questions. Officers work in stressful, dangerous environments where they must balance security with humane treatment. Maintaining order while managing inmates struggling with trauma, anger, addiction, or mental illness creates emotional and professional pressure for prison employees. Debates about justice often involve not only inmates, but also the working conditions and responsibilities of correctional staff. Public opinion about prisons is often divided because crime creates fear, anger, and emotional reactions within society. Victims of crime and their families may feel that severe punishment is necessary for justice to be served. At the same time, others believe that lasting public safety depends on reducing repeat offenses through rehabilitation and support systems rather than relying only on punishment. Alaska's prisons serve as a powerful example of how complicated the justice system can become when harsh environmental conditions, social problems, mental health issues, and criminal behavior all intersect. The debates surrounding these prisons continue to challenge society's understanding of accountability, rehabilitation, human rights, and the possibility of personal change inside one of the most isolated correctional systems in America.